and we are live. So, hello everyone that's out there listening, watching, however you're kind of taking in this. We are back with another company spotlight today, and I'm really excited that the guys from Gelato have joined us because they are looking for a number of roles, which we'll get to. But the one in question today is the junior front end dev position. And joining me is we have Joe, who is the head of talent at Gelato, and Sylvain, who is the tech lead, who is basically overseeing the team that the potential candidate may or may not be coming in to work under. So the guys are going to just have a chat with me about a few things in general, about Gelato, what life looks there to work with them, and kind of get a general ballpark idea of what it might look like for any potential candidate or someone that might be heading into an interview, or even if you've just kind of seen the job ad online and considering, is it worth applying here? Hopefully between the three of us, we will have the answers to the majority of your questions. So first things first, hi guys, thank you so much for coming on. It's Monday. How are we doing today and this morning?
It's Monday at midday, and I'm intermittently fasting throughout the day, so I'm very hungry right now. But I'm going to be on my best behavior, I promise.
How are you, Sylvain? All good?
Yeah, all good. Just fixing some issues just before the call. All good now, so ready to.
Back to back, love it.
Well, great way to start a Monday. So, can I just get you two to kind of give me in your own words what you do at Gelato first and foremost? I know I kind of give a brief introduction there to your roles, but if we started with you, Joe, can you just tell anyone that would be listening and watching, what do you do at Gelato and how long have you been there, so on and so forth? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure, appreciate the question, and thanks for inviting me on. So, hey, I'm Joseph McMullen. My role here is head of HR at Gelato. As with any kind of startup organization, you tend to have multiple hats, and I kind of wear three main hats, right? So, number one, I'm responsible for talent acquisition. So that is finding, interviewing, assessing, selecting, onboarding, contracting, and enabling, good talented people into our organization. It's like a dark art form, and it's really probably one of my favorite parts of my job. Two, it's around employee relations. So it's about being that trusted advisor that sits kind of separate to your direct level manager relationship and providing the kind of soft skills support and enablement, helping to create the right environment for each colleague that we have in our business. And then three, it's around kind of leadership advisory and board advisory for kind of general people related matters to make sure that the people have the right seat at the table when the important decisions are made by the founders. In terms of how long I've been here for, I'm coming up to my year's anniversary in the next kind of few weeks. I'm sure you'll ask me some questions and I'll talk a bit about like our token package and investing and how that works. So when I say I'm coming up to my first year's cliff, it's a very exciting time for me right now. And I left Meta to join this organization, which was no small choice. At the end of the bull run, before Meta had their issues. And so, feel free to ask me any questions around what it's like to kind of work here and the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, because it's like night and day for really positive reasons. And so that's me.
That's great. And I'm sure even hearing what you said there, Joe, we will probably have you back on Talking Shop to talk more specifically about your own route from Web 2 into Web 3, because that's a story in itself. But
super fun. And I'm nowhere near learning. I know nothing that I need to know, but day by day, I learn more about Web3, but love it.
Yeah, that's great. And then Sylvain, again, thanks for coming on, man. Can you just tell me a little bit about your own background and your role at Gelato and go from there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me as well. So at Gelato, I'm a technical lead. So that's covering two main missions. First one is senior developer, mostly backend developer, doing a bit also of front end on database, all of the stack. So as senior on tech lead, I'm reviewing other team members, developers to deliver, doing some specification, code review, and also implementing a lot of stuff myself, because we're a startup and everyone gets on dirty and deliver and participate in shipping. And the second part of the tech lead is more about managing project, managing people, making sure we respect our deadline for project, and making sure that everyone is growing successfully inside the team as well, and working where they are best to deliver. So a bit more about my background. So I've joined Gelato 1 year ago as well, probably 1 or 2 months before Joe. So it was my first year anniversary quite recently.
That's great.
And before that, I've been mostly working on Web 2 in e-commerce and web advertising. I had a small company. I was CEO of my own company. We were doing data science stuff for advertising, for e-commerce. It was pretty exciting, but at some point I got very interested in Web3, and I kind of close all my previous project and contracts to be able to ride on my own and make a full transition to Web3, and started with some like side project on open source contribution before I was able to postulate to a real Web3 company, and this was Gelato.
Amazing. And if we kind of, started at the forefront of Gelato, if people were listening and they were interested, as I'm sure they would be, because the job ads themselves are incredibly inviting for people, could you give me like a brief overview of the, for someone who would be completely cold to it, what Gelato does and how it all operates as a company? We don't need to get into the weeds of it, but what would be a brief overview of Gelato?
Sylvain, I think you'd probably be good to take this from a technical perspective in terms of what we do as a business.
Yeah. So I think at Gelato we are aiming to onboard the next wave of user to Web3, and that's like a big mission. And for this, we realize that currently on blockchain ecosystem there is a lot of missing piece to have an ecosystem which is capable of so many things as current Web 2 is capable.
Yeah.
The first thing that our founder have been focusing on is automation, smart contract automation, because on blockchain everything is kind of static. You deploy smart contract, but nothing happens. You need a human to submit a transaction all the time. So our first Gelato mission was building this automation protocol to allow like payment or any kind of recurring automation to be happening on chain, same as those stuff can happen on classic economies.
Yeah.
And currently we are also focusing on lots of aspects for user interaction, because it's the main friction point when you interact with blockchain for the first time. You need a wallet, a private key, and you need to have some native token to submit transaction, and it's very complicated for end users and not yet onboarded to Web3. And we have our new product Relay and gasless transaction, which is aiming to onboard new wave of user without requiring all this technical first stuff.
Amazing.
I think just to add something on top of that, not to put any finer point on it, but I wanted to start with the finer point first, right? Because I knew that I wouldn't really understand that. Thank you though, Sylvain. But two, like from somebody who's coming from a Web 2 background, right? If you're a developer or you're an engineer, you understand this. If you understand the market already, you understand this, right? But we hire and we look for lots of different people, and we like bringing good Web 2 people, right? With good fundamental principles outside of that market into us. And so here's from a layman coming from, again, a Web 2 tech business into Web 3. And once I figured this out, I realized that this business model is super sustainable and it's a great company to work for. We're the infrastructure provider for Web3, right?
Yeah.
So you think, and when I interview and when I talk about our business from a broad strokes perspective, think of like an AWS, GCP, or Azure, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of like that, right? Big broad strokes. We provide the infrastructure to enable this Web3 to work, right? And it's the future. So whilst we're a small business and we're scaling up, and we can't compare yourself in terms of size to these huge players, these businesses are servicing the biggest ecosystem the world's ever seen, and that's web, Web 2.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a new venture. Web 3 is a relatively new venture that's picking up sustainable speed. And this is an infrastructure business that enables that to happen. I did my first bridge the other week. It was the most scary experience of my entire life. If anybody doesn't know what a bridge is, scary, right? And I realized as soon as I executed that bridge, right? So I went from scared to feeling in safe hands, executed the bridge, and then I realized that the bridger was our client. The bridger was, we were doing that. So you didn't see Gelato at the bottom of the screen saying powered by Gelato and we're doing this. But the reality is our relay product, right, that Sylvain supports, bridged my payment from ETH to Polygon.
Yeah.
And I felt instantaneously in safe hands. So when you're thinking about the volatility and the worry of crypto, DeFi, Web3, and how crazy it can be at times, I'm a Web 2 individual, 39 with 2 kids and a house and assets, and I chose Gelato over a number of other businesses because I knew the sustainability of this business means that we're here to stay. So the infrastructure AWS provider is what really resonates with me.
Yeah, that's a very, very strong start, by the way, from both of you. This podcast.
Well, it's only going to get worse from here, guys. Right?
And it leads me into kind of where I did want to use as a sort of a secondary point is the first time we met, Joe. What sort of struck me about you in particular is just like how passionate you were in general about like your job and your role at Gelato and kind of the background you've come from. And that obviously is for a particular reason. And I can kind of see it in myself when I look at the job specs and the ads that go out there, that they're different to a lot of what I've seen in Web3, and that there's a lot, it's very candidate focused and, kind of what's in it for you, which is what we want to see more of. But from, your perspective, how would you kind of tell me like what makes it great to work for the company? Aside from the tech and everything that we've kind of covered there and the excitement of the space in general, what is so great about Gelato?
Good question. And this comes from like experience as a consultant and running my own business for many years and getting to work with some amazing brands out there. I won't name the brands, but some amazing brands.
Yeah.
I'd say like number one, we work remotely, right?
Yeah.
And that was a rarity pre-pandemic, and then it's become a way of life. And now people are being dragged back into the office at times kicking and screaming, but we work remotely. I like the idea that I can turn up in the UK one month and I can next month turn up in Iceland. Right? You know, and we have colleagues that literally, I'm not saying Iceland, but literally turn up in a different country for the month. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
We work autonomously in reality, right? It isn't like some gimmick.
Yeah.
We work autonomously, which means you own your own work stream, and nobody's looking over your shoulder at 4:59 p.m. and asking you why your Slack's been offline for 10 minutes, right? It just doesn't exist here.
Yeah.
We work pretty asynchronously within reason, I'm a father of 2 kids, and one of them needs substantial support and extra help. I get to work asynchronously within reason to be a present father and a present partner, as well as being 150% dedicated towards the success of this business. I juggle a lot of plates, and some of us have more or less plates to juggle, but I can do that successfully here. The idea of doing this at the previous job, impossible.
Would never been. Yeah.
I like the fact that we're a mix of freelancers and Swiss-based permanent people, but we treat everybody the same, right? How many freelancers that you now get holiday? None.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
Right? So holiday and these kind of extra benefits that feel like you're a permanent member of the business when contractually you're a freelancer because you're based 2,000 miles away is a huge thing. And I think the last thing is that like we're all invested in the success of this project and this business. We've got a token package that sees like real-time vesting through smart contracts, right? You get to earn your tokens every second of every day of every month of every year. And that is great to know that we all kind of share, like our work matters and the work that we do matters, and it drives the price up, and that price is our financial freedom in the future. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
From a personal perspective, and I like people and I like psychology, and thank you for saying that I'm passionate because I do this because I like what I do.
Yeah.
We have a globally remote team, and I think that we use technology really well to keep us all feeling connected no matter how far we are away. And I think meeting great people from different walks of life, different cultures, different environments helps us all to grow as human beings. And I think that we get to interact with different cultures and backgrounds every day And I think that's really, really cool. So in terms of like what it's like to work for us, lots. And that's not even, that's half of the good news.
And you can kind of make it your own as well, I guess, to a certain extent, you know, with you talking about kind of parenthood and everything. And the remote answer leads me on pretty well to what I wanted to bring up next is obviously if it is a kind of fully remote environment, how do you guys make that work effectively? Because it obviously the fluidity is amazing, but you kind of have to have, I guess, some sort of, and we see it with ourselves, with our own projects, like how do you keep it so the team are able to work effectively and be autonomous, but still be on the same page, and kind of day-to-day working? I guess it's a double barrel question. And what does the typical day look like, and how does it all come together effectively?
Sure. Okay. I think I'll take the typical day thing, right? Right. So I wake up with the kids, get them ready for school, right? I blocked off that early morning. Don't put meetings in my diary to ensure that there's no rush, right? I can get them to school, right? No one's stressed out. Come back, look at my diary, look at my calendar, you know, cover the various work streams that I do, and you know, just focusing on work and output and delivery. 3 p.m. comes up, blocked out that time again for half an hour, so there's no rush for the school run. Get them back, get them organized, get their homework sorted, and you know, back to work for the rest of the day, right? And then like at the end of that day, turn the computer off and like turn around.
Yeah.
I'm not getting on a train back home or driving for 45 minutes. I turn around and I'm back to being a father and a parent and looking after like personal life. And I think that like there are good days and there are bad days, right? You're going to have days where you want to chuck your computer at the wall for whatever reason.
Of course.
But on the general balance of things, like this allows me and others to have the work-life balance that really allows us to put in that 110%, which we all expect, right? We're a very flexible business, but we have high expectations, right? High expectations for our candidates, high expectations for ourselves. But it allows us to look after our lives as well as looking after our business. And so that's for me is a typical day. And then in terms of like maybe how that actually works in reality, you know, how we work together. We love Slack, man. Like days before Slack, Sylvain. Do you remember?
I think maybe I could also give some answer from a developer perspective to this question. So basically, we are working in an agile environment and work cycle. So we have what we call daily meetings, which is daily stand-ups. We all see each other in a Zoom meeting every day for 15-20 minutes. So it's short meeting, but just so that we are all in sync with what everyone is working on currently, and if everyone has any blocker, to make sure we can discuss it together. And then most of the work team activities managed asynchronously using mostly Slack channels or all other messaging application we could use as well. And we try to be all aware of time zone for all our team members. So sometimes it's difficult to schedule meeting because you have people in Asia, people in America, people in Europe. Most of the team is Europe based. So we just make sure that we find correct time for everyone. So that we have some synchronous time for video call, and the rest is handled asynchronously.
It really feels to me, listening to the way the two of you have both described that at Gelato, you've kind of nailed this real new way of world working, in that we kind of preach about it constantly with Web3 nomads, but in the sort of kind of theory of giving people complete autonomy, but then complete accountability as well. And it's kind of like the onus is on people to, you know, you've got the freedom to make this whatever you want it to be, which is an incredible thing. But then equally, you're also highly accountable for making sure that it does work for you and kind of constantly aligns with everything that the company's working towards. It sounds an incredibly exciting place to be.
And that absolutely hits the nail on the head. And that's what I kind of wanted to kind of finish off on. I mean, ask yourself the question, right? Whether you're here or whether you're listening, like ask yourself the question, do I need to be in the office, right? With a laptop, with a computer, with a webcam, with a mic or whatever, what what can I do in an office that I cannot do remotely? If the answer is nothing, I question the need. There are a number of
Yeah.
roles that value that constant in the office interaction, and I get that it's not for everybody, but it's a value that we believe in. And back to that, how do we actually make this work, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to have these great esoterical theories and concepts, but how does it work? And Sylvain alluded to using the technology because it's there to help keep us connected when we're physically, geographically
Yeah.
disconnected. Right. I remember in one of my first ever professional managers told me you lose 90% of effective communication when you're not together face to face. Right.
Hmm.
Are we face to face? Do you see me? Do you
Yeah.
value me? Am I giving you body language? Are we talking? Can you hear my voice? So we use technology to really communicate in an extremely effective manner.
Yeah.
And like I said, I turn around and I'm in my home.
Hmm.
And I love that autonomy, and I love that idea about autonomy is like a double-edged sword. If
Yeah.
no one's looking over your shoulder, you still need to make sure that you're getting the work done. So as a business, we value output and objectives being completed, less so the journey that we take to get there. Does that make sense?
100%. And we're seeing this more and more throughout Web3, and it kind of it's working clearly. And again, to bring back to the point I just made, and you guys are clearly nailing that really effectively. And but before I get into the rule specific kind of questions, I did want to ask about kind of motivation with personal and company wide goals, and how do you kind of keep and look, there's been a lot of breadcrumbs already throughout this conversation with how people are motivated. But like, is there how would you kind of view that as when people come in, like you kind of set out the company goals to them, disregarding everything that is already sounds golden of what we've just talked about? Is there a way
Mm,
that we kind of keep people on track with that? Or is it just the
mm.
constant communication and, like you said, Joe, the checking in and making sure that people are always on the same page?
God, that's a really good question. Um, because look, like, motivation waxes and wanes at times, right?
Yeah,
In life as well as jobs, right?
absolutely,
Like it's
absolutely.
bad
Yeah.
days and days that you can't even remember because they were so bad. Like
Yeah.
Sylvan's nodding his head. We have good and bad days here too.
Hmm.
I suppose there's kind of three main factors. Like one, we often find that you're here working with us because you love Web3, you love
Yeah.
crypto, you love DeFi. There's a little degen in you, and there's a big degen in me that's trying to come out, right? Slowly. But you're excited to work on cool stuff in like a rapidly
Absolutely. Yeah.
developing universe. That's really exciting. This ability to try again and to create a new financial social structure is
Hmm.
absolutely exciting. Who doesn't want to build a Lego
Yeah.
castle from the first brick up, right? Like I do. That's cool. But that only gets you so far, right?
Yeah.
Two, you should be motivated by the balance of life and work that you get when you work the way that we do, right? We
Yeah.
talked about that before, the breadcrumbs.
Hmm.
Yeah. But number three, like I alluded to this before, like we all have the days where we're like, I do not even want to look at myself, let alone other people. The laptop's going to go out the window. I'm done.
Hmm.
Bad days. The thing is that if you know the work that you do affects the success of the business and its token value, and
Yeah.
ultimately your financial structure and your financial future is tied in to the success of this business and what you do, if that doesn't motivate you, if those individually don't motivate you, that's
Yeah.
one. But if together they don't motivate you, like what does?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a great answer. I don't even need to kind of pick into it anymore. I think it's super, super solid. But the role that you guys are kind of hiring through us at the minute is the junior front end dev position. So can we start with just providing a bit of a brief overview of the role for anyone listening? Obviously, they'll have seen the job spec and the job ad anyway. But from kind of horse's mouth, what is the brief overview? What would this person and candidate be doing?
Yeah, so the idea for us is to have someone new join our UI team.
Yep.
So UI team is made of front-end developers and UX designers, and
Uh-huh.
this team is responsible for building all user interface we have at Gelato. So it's our products, automate, relay web3 functions, or main product and new product, historical and new one
Yep.
that are constantly evolving, as well as building as well our website and blog. We are focusing recently on rebranding Gelato end of last year.
Okay,
And
cool.
it was a challenging project for the UI team with very successful results. The new website and the new branding is very awesome. We recently got figured in some designer magazine online for as a Web3 reference.
Yeah.
And also the UI team is building some events projects for conferences or for community. Recently, we launched CorudDAO, which is a protocol on Lancer where everyone can mint NFT and send messages on the social network online. So we have a lot of user-facing products, and so the junior front-end developer we will hire will be involved in all of those projects, or main products, or main website, or side event projects as well. So there is a lot of fun to build all of this. Also, a lot of challenge and expectation to make things looking easy to use for end user, while it's quite technical stuff under the hood.
So very, very varied and also very exciting is what I'm hearing there, to be honest. And as far as like the person in question, do you have an idea in your head of like what sort of individual would be right as far as the skills and personality, what they would bring to the table?
Yeah, so I think we've discussed already a lot about the fact that we are a remote company, and this has some impact on the personal skill set we are looking for. So definitely looking for someone who is highly autonomous, who has a sense of ownership, because you need that to work remotely, because you don't have your colleague next to you all the time. So that's the first aspect in terms of personality. I think it's important also to be very curious, because we are in Web3. We are keen to accept people who didn't have like a real professional experience in Web3 yet, Web2 people, same as Joe and me before joining Gelato. But you need to be very curious and have high interest in blockchain Web3 ecosystem, and have like played a bit with some stuff already on side project or anything, because you will need to be very curious about everything in blockchain if you want to be a successful developer in Web3
Absolutely.
ecosystem.
And
how about tech stack? Just real quick, like just the like, what kind of tech stack does this individual need?
It's very standard to any front-end position, I would say. So we are building with React and Vue.js, which are the two mostly used front-end framework nowadays. So you need to be able to work with one or two of them already. I've like 2-3 years of experience working with them. And obviously being able to do like CSS and implementing design, but it's part of any front-end developer. And so we also obviously have the Web3 parts in our interface. So you will interact with it daily with all those Web3 libraries and Web3 tooling. You don't need to have like real professional experience with them yet, but you will need to be very curious to understand how things work and be able to work with them and self-taught yourself.
Yeah. And what is, do you have any examples of kind of some recent technical problems that the team may have had to contend with, and like to give someone a flavor of what sort of, you know, head scratches they might get when they're coming on board, of like, what might my day-to-day look like?
I think, for example, so we are always trying to make our user interface easier to use for end user. And for this, currently all the pain point is about like your MetaMask wallet in your browser. You always have like to switch network because currently we are interacting with a lot of blockchain. You have to handle transaction. So recently we are in the middle of migrating all our application to multi-chain by default. So you won't need to switch network all the time to interact with another blockchain, for example. So that's one technical challenge we had to implement recently, because under the hood we have to do a lot of front-end engineering to abstract this from the end user. And also we are actively working on gasless transaction and account abstraction as well. So this is related, like you don't need anymore to send the transaction yourself with your MetaMask. This is completely abstracted to the end user, but it comes at cost to engineering all this logic in our front end and our back end products or relay product. So yeah, that's some of the recent technical challenge we've been dealing with.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like we've kind of covered a lot there. So maybe to kind of move it towards tying this up, if there was a candidate out there listening to this, they've heard a lot now about not only the role in question and what they'll be doing on a day-to-day basis, but also about Gelato and the structure and the setup and fundamentally what you guys think of it that live and breathe it every day. What's the what would the hiring process look like for these guys? They see the application, they come through, they hit the apply button. How do they kind of go about sitting across the table from you two and being interviewed, and what, if anything, is there anything else they would need to know?
Sure, like that. I'll take that. So fairly simple interview process. First stage is with me. So we'll have a relatively informal conversation. I always like to have a pretty informal conversation first to figure out whether there's a point and a purpose in having a more formal conversation later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So you'll have me for 30, 45 minutes. We'll talk a bit about the business, about me, what I do, the business, what we do, how we do it. We always like to talk to candidates and see if they've done a little bit of background understanding or research. You know what I mean? So that's
which you would hope they would have.
which you would hope that they would have. But we're such a technical orientated business, right? It's hard.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I always like to kind of understand what the candidate has done to do some research into who we are and what we do. And then really where the rubber meets the road is the technical challenge, right?
Yeah.
So it's around a front end, or whatever the role is, but a front end orientated technical challenge that will take this candidate for a couple of hours or whatever through a process that will do two things. One, it'll show what they can do in those traditional methodologies, traditional tech stack, traditional Web 2 stuff. And then there'll be a little bit of a kind of a Web 3 flavor. And that will, if this candidate has a bunch of Web 3 experience, they should breeze through it, right?
Yeah.
If they don't have Web 3 experience, and correct me, Sylvain, if I'm wrong, there'll need to be some little bit of research, a little bit of autonomous and asynchronous behavioral research into, well, what's this and what's this web library, and how do I integrate that into my challenge? So you've got that kind of rubber meets the road technical challenge, and it's a common concept across the industry for engineers, because we like to see what this person can do before they come and join us. And then lastly, there's like a good technical review. So final stage will be like, here's the challenge. Thank you for your time and investment in this. Let's go through this. Take a look at it. What's good, what's bad, what we can do to improve. And then you've got me for behavioral competency questions around what kind of person are you to join this business. And then you'll meet the founder, and the founder will be talking with you about Web3 and your desire and your interest, and a bit of a sense check. So there's a nice rounded process that gets everybody what they need, right? The candidate understands what it is that we do and what the value that we bring to them, and vice versa. We have a bit of a sense check on whether they can code and deliver, and whether their behaviors are right for us.
Yeah, I mean, can't really argue with any of that. I mean, I think that we've covered a lot there, guys. Is there any closing thoughts, any kind of final messages you want to send out? I know that you guys, as I said at the start of this call, you have a lot on offer to the candidates, most of which we've covered here today. I mean, but even the kind of the company meetups that you do in person and everything, is there any last minute things that we should throw in there that people would want to hear? Or I also think we've got a lot of meat on the bones here to go away with.
I think we've covered a huge amount, and it's been immensely I'm very happy to be here and to talk about Gelato. I think I would end it on this, and that's that we're a startup scale-up organization, right?
Yeah.
And the roles that we have don't necessarily mean that the roles that we have tomorrow, next month, and next year. But if you're interested in our business and our brand and what we do and the kind of cool stuff that we do,
Yeah.
keep in touch, right? Keep an eye on our career page. Take a look at what we do. We're a fast-paced business. And if you find that a role comes up and it's not quite right for you, then keep in touch, keep looking, and I like to create a good talent pool of interested candidates that I can reach out proactively when things kind of heat up. And past crypto winter, things are going to be really exciting, and so we'll grow along with that. So keep an eye out on our site.
That's a great way to end it. Thank you again, guys, for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.